you tell us a little bit about your experiences through the pandemic, perhaps a particular incident that comes to mind, and how these experiences are shaping your longer term plans?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm sure everyone's going to have a dire tale from the last couple of years. I think in our industry, in the hotel and restaurant space, it was difficult, but compounded by the fact, I often say about our business, our business is sort of a hospitality business, a hotel operating business, or a restaurant business, or both, stacked on top of a real estate business. And so when things are going well and you've got capable managers, there's two ways to generate value. On the other hand, there's also two ways to get smoked. And during COVID, we got smoked on all fronts, right? The operating side of the business came to a screeching halt. We went from running, in March across portfolio wide, say 78% occupancy, to dropping down to about 2% occupancy in a matter of 5 days. You go from generating, approaching $1 billion in revenue to, generating $80 million in revenue, and all the bills are still lined up, right? So it was very, very difficult. We unfortunately, primarily because of the heavy balance sheet load that we have in our business, we burnt a good amount of cash in 2020, and turned only cash flow positive in July of this year. And so it's been a very difficult time. I guess the more interesting part of the story is, what did we do? We're in the first month alone, we burned almost $12.5 million in cash. And as we all know, cash doesn't grow on trees unless you live in Washington. And so we had to figure out what to do. It was difficult. There was just no demand. We were in a lockdown situation in the world. We had been told not to gather. And so for the first few months, we really jumped early onto the support side of the equation, where we were, helping with a lot of the early medical responders and the Army National Guard, fire departments, et cetera. Because what we learned quickly in this, when you do sensitivity analyses, right, you'll do a down 20, a down 30, maybe even a black swan down 40, but no one ever says, let's try that with 0. Let's see how that looks, right? So that there's no planning for this kind of an event, right? And but what we did realize is that we could actually burn less cash if we were doing even 11% occupancy portfolio wide. So our immediate first step became, whatever demand is out there, let's consolidate it and try to stem the losses. And so we were able to keep our hotels open, which allowed us to keep more people employed than many of our peers. And the real lesson in that is, when things started coming back, we already had some staffing. It certainly wasn't enough, but in addition to being able to keep the team together and at least support those families, outside of having to lay off some 4,300 people, which was the worst thing I ever went through. But we were able to have team, and it kind of kept some continuity, which when things came back was a big advantage. But reduction in services, housekeeping daily, thing of the past, right? Unless you're in a luxury hotel, I would wish you good luck in trying to get housekeeping services on a daily basis. Some of those changes we made to the program and service delivery model that allowed us to survive then are continuing to help us in a recovery, right? We were expecting to be back to 19 levels in 23, 24. But I would imagine that becomes standard operating procedure. And I think for a lot of us, depending on the jurisdictions we operated in, one way or the other, we changed our operating models. And it's going to be interesting to see how sticky some of the more efficiencies are in that, or if as people come back, we'll be fighting for share and adding back a lot of costs. But that's a long-winded answer.
So Jay, you kind of talked about baselining it at the new 11% occupancy and kind of adjusting services such as no longer daily service, etc. Kind of the top 3 things you think is going to be part of your standard operating procedures kind of going forward, regardless of what you did during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mentioned, for instance, buffets. You're probably seeing some buffets come back, but buffets in general, at 3-star and 4-star hotels, they turn out to be something that where we lose more money just from waste factors and things like that. And you really aren't offering a great service, right? In some ways, if you've got, it's one thing if you go to a luxury hotel and have a luxury brunch and it's a buffet, so that's different than the breakfast buffets where kind of felt like a trough of eggs on a sterno, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and I'm exaggerating, but that's all become sort of boxed model or hand delivery, which allows our cost per occupied room to be a lot more predictable, allows us from an ordering standpoint to be a lot more efficient, and probably deliver in some cases as good, if not a better experience. Housekeeping is something, at luxury hotels, we've reintroduced daily housekeeping and turn down service for sure. When you get to a 4-star hotel, depending on what market we're in and what sort of ADR environment we're operating in there, you'll likely have housekeeping every other day. And then at 3-star hotels, there's no housekeeping during your stay unless it's requested and you opt into it. And even the daily luxury housekeeping, we're going down from 28 to 32 minutes per room down to about 10 to 12 minutes. So it's gone from a full-on clean to a tidy. And a tidy is the bed is made, the terry is changed out, and the waste paper baskets are emptied, rather than a full change of linens and a complete changing out of all terry. Now, when you think through all of this, right, it's not only the labor costs that we're saving, but the laundry costs will be down. And then OS&E, our supply costs, because there's a lot of waste. And what we found from guest surveys and things is people really, there is a fraction of folks that like daily housekeeping service. We found that the vast majority of guests would prefer or don't mind not having somebody come in their room if they're there for a 2-day or less stay.
Yeah.
And so just a little bit of an information-led decision we made there. But it's things like that. I could go on, but it might get a little boring.
Yeah. Munish, your most vivid experience from the last couple of years, and what are you institutionalizing from that experience going forward?
One experience that stands out is when this whole thing started, we had no clue what was going on. And we started getting calls from all our restaurants like, employees are refusing to come in. They don't want to come in. They don't want to work. We want to shut the restaurants down. So we had this 6.5-hour meeting at our Girard Avenue office where all the managers were there. We're all saying, let's shut the restaurants down. And here's the kicker. Let's shut the restaurants down for 4 weeks and then let this thing pass and then we'll open again. So we've gone from that. We were somehow able to come to a decision that we're going to be smart about it, keep the restaurants open, see what information and news comes out. And none of our restaurant ever got shut down because of that, which was, thank God, because that 4 weeks is still going on. We're still not out of it. But having said that, our experience was a little bit different because we always were focused on carry out and delivery. A good majority of our business always came from carry out and delivery. And it kind of fell into our lap, the whole thing. It just worked out for us in a way. I like to tell, I was used to say to people everywhere, everyone is pivoting to what we were already doing at that point. So our experience was a little bit different in that regard, that our sales actually went up. Our issues were different. We just couldn't find people to staff the restaurants. We had to shut restaurant down, not because we didn't have business, but because we had no people to work. And then when the federal aid started coming in, it became more, it compounded the whole problem because people were getting money. If they were on unemployment, they were getting extra money. So they had no incentive to come to work. So we, from a business perspective, we did just fine. Our sales were strong. They actually became stronger during the pandemic. Our struggles were more just keeping the restaurant open and keeping the restaurant staffed. We closed our dining rooms even before the city and the state mandated it. In that meeting, one of the decisions we made was that we'll close the dining rooms right away. That was about a week before the city asked everyone to close the dining rooms. So it was an interesting journey that every day was a new experience. Every day new news was coming out, and every morning it was like, what are we going to do today? Which restaurants are open? Which restaurants are not open? Which restaurants are staffed? Which restaurants are not staffed? But we got through it, and after a while, things normalized. We got used to wearing masks and all that stuff, so things worked out okay. And the biggest the biggest thing that we did was not close our restaurants. I think Jay mentioned some of this, made some of the same points that they were able to keep the hotels open and with a minimum staff. So when the business did come back, we were still open and we had staff to service our customers.
Got it. So Munish, I'm going to come back to you a little bit later, and we're going to spend more time talking about delivery. But I think this is a good segue to Ellen, right? Which is the differences in experiences depending on category of restaurant. And again, one of the pieces of data I picked up when I was looking at another survey was last year or last summer and fall, 37% of adults decided that they were going to order delivery or takeout instead of dining out at a restaurant. And Ellen, clearly a place like Fork, which is, as we discussed, a destination, fine dining experience. How do you think about adjusting during the pandemic? What are the learnings post-pandemic? And clearly, what do you believe are the kinds of experiences that are going to bring people back into that dining experience again?
Well, I read the title of your webinar, and I don't know if I agree 100%, because the bottom line is people still want to be together and they will still want to celebrate and have those elevated experiences, but it may be on a broader scale. Maybe it's not a fine dining restaurant, but it's a more upscale restaurant, or maybe it's not any of those. But I think that there will still be people who want those types of experiences. Just like everybody else, nobody expected this. And one of the things that I was found remarkable, High Street operates a bakery, and the bakery is probably the most difficult, harder than a restaurant to operate, because it is a labor-intensive business. And suddenly, all our orders from, we're partners with Heirloom Market, all our orders from Heirloom Market started doubling. And suddenly our bakery during the shutdown was our most busy part of the business, which is kind of hysterical because it's it's the most challenging and most difficult to manage and all that. And also we had the issue of our employees not wanting to come to work as well. But we also did not want to shut down. And as much as Fork, I knew that there was not going to be anybody coming to the restaurant to eat at Fork. I wasn't going to let our restaurant do nothing. And so we basically turned into a commissary for frontline workers, feeding the University of Pennsylvania doctors and nurses, Jefferson doctors and nurses. And our team never imagined that we could do 500 meals a day. I mean, we're talking about if we have 65 covers that people think it's busy, So 500 covers a day just created a complete mind-blowing experience for everyone. Moving forward, though, I do believe that there is a niche for this, and it's been very difficult because Fork is not in the Rittenhouse area. It's in the tourism historic district. And, obviously during the summertime, we did see hints of life in that segment, but it still hasn't returned. And a lot of that is due to business travel. So, without business travel and without business meetings, even local or regional, it is a difficult segment to fill. But, we did take it down a notch. We had to streamline, just like Jay was saying. We, for example, at A Kitchen, we used to serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Well, we eliminated breakfast and we only served lunch and dinner and one menu all day. We were able to manage that with the number of staff we had, and we actually performed better than when we were open, full scale. So, sometimes that creative, the survival mode just pushes you into making decisions that you have to make. And now when we look back at some of the decisions, do we have to have 10 appetizers and 10 entrees? Maybe not. Do we have to have 5 sections, maybe not. So we have been looking at all those things just like everybody else and trying to figure out what really is at the heart of hospitality in that type of environment.